Welcome to the Florida Family Law Attorney Podcast. Today we have somebody on who's just been doing some excellent work in the community. It's a true representation of what it means to be a community steward. It's Chris McKinney, who serves as the director of Pensacola Teen Challenge, where his pastoral calling and leadership converge in a mission to cultivate genuine transformation. A devoted husband and father of two, Chris carries a deep commitment to guiding individuals towards spiritual renewal and sustained freedom from addiction. Chris, welcome on, and thank you so much for being on this morning.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be able to share about our mission and what God's doing through the program.
We're excited to hear about it, Chris, and all the great things that I know you've been doing. We had the opportunity to sponsor an event with you guys and saw a lot of it firsthand. Chris, before we get into all the incredible work you're doing, I want our listeners to hear your story. What brought you to Pensacola Teen Challenge and what drives you to do this work every day?
I'll just share a little bit about my testimony. When I was growing up, I had a great upbringing, a great family, and I slipped into some addiction issues early on in my life and in high school. And my addiction issues led me to kind of lose all motivation to really do the things that I was raised to do. I said I would never use drugs. My mom was actually an addict. I was raised by my grandparents. And so I said I would never use drugs. I would never go down that path. And I actually did. And I kind of lost myself, lost what I knew was the right thing to do, lost kind of some of those basic principles that I grew up with in my life, and lost motivation to really, just live a successful life like my grandfather and my grandmother had taught me. One day, my mother found her way to Pensacola Teen Challenge Women's Center. And in that moment, she had left where we were from and she went to Teen Challenge. And that really started our journey with Teen Challenge. I was still in addiction, still lost, still doing things that I knew I wasn't supposed to do. And I came to her graduation from the program here in this facility where I'm sitting today, Pensacola Men's Center. And I had hope for the first time because I seen the change in her. And I remember that day I just went up to the altar. I cried out to God and I said, I need your help. And a few days later, I entered the Teen Challenge Men's Center, and that was 15 years ago. And so Teen Challenge for us, for my wife and I, we lead this organization, is personal because we are products of the work that happens here. She helps with the Women's Center and I do the men, and we do both together though. And the motivation behind it is we want to do what God's called us to do, but we also want to help people who have the same past that we have and help people receive freedom from life controlling issues and addiction. So that's our story. That's my story. That's where it came from. My wife's a graduate of the program too. So Teen Challenge changed the entire course of our family. And without it, we wouldn't be where we are today. And so that's the driving and motivating factor to why we help people the way that we do. We were once where they are, and we know the way out.
The older I get, and the more I think about family law and life, I think you have to have an incredible why to do incredible things. And that's one of the most incredible whys I've ever heard. And, you guys are just doing excellent things. And with that why, it lets you be able to do, in my opinion, things that seem difficult to impossible because you have that motivation. That strong why becomes critical over everything else. So, for listeners who may not be familiar, give us the full picture of Pensacola Teen Challenge, specifically the Women's Center, the Men's Center, and what the mission truly is, and what does it look like on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so our vision is to put hope within reach, and our mission is to offer life transformation through a Christ-centered program. We are a faith-based recovery program. We help individuals who specifically struggle with addiction and alcoholism, but there's a lot more to that than just those things. Addiction and alcoholism is really the surface of what's going on inside of a person, in their heart, in their mind, in their life. We help people that, come from homeless situations, people who come from severe addiction situations. We even assist people that struggle with mental health battles. We don't specifically have licensed mental health care here, but we do know everyone in the community who does. And so if they're in our program, we help them take care of their mental health as well. We believe in a holistic approach at Teen Challenge where you're dealing with the mind, the soul, or the spiritual piece. You're dealing with the emotional, the mental, the physical side of who a person is. And we're 1 year long, which means they come, they live with us, they stay at our facilities for an entire year. We are very low cost. In fact, if students cannot pay to be here, we will provide a scholarship for them and allow them to come into the program at no cost. We do a lot of different things while they're here. We could take them through classes, discipleship stuff with the spiritual side, but we also do practical relapse prevention, how to manage your finances, different things like that. We help students reintegrate really back into society. It's just a great opportunity. Work therapy as well. And so that's what we do as a whole. We help bring people to a place where they can reset and get back on track with really what we believe is their true purpose in life. A lot of people don't feel like they have hope in those situations. And so we get an opportunity to do that. We have men and women here. We can hold 100 men at Pensacola Men's Center, and we can hold 36 women at the Women's Center. And so we help the local area, the surrounding area. Sometimes we get people from other parts of the country too. So just whoever calls, we try to be here to answer that call and be an available resource for them to find freedom.
That's a great calling, and the number of people I'm sure you're able to touch, and for listeners out there, I'm not a counselor or not in a position that Chris is in. The length of the program is pretty impressive because I've heard a lot of studies and studies that circuit judges have shared with us that to really break the recovery or to break the addiction, you have to have a long recovery period, and that you guys are able to really do that and it not be a 4 week or a 6 week program, but to really keep them there under your watchful eye, under your stewardship, and provide them a year is, that's pretty amazing. And, I think that's a great resource and a great thing you guys are doing for the community and for anybody who needs your help. It's what it sounds like. You're there to answer their call. And sounds like it's a real calling for you and a passionate thing. So, what types of challenges, bring women or men through your doors? I imagine it's not just one thing. Talk to us about the range of circumstances you see, because in my experience, addiction sometimes relates to mental health. It relates to abusive relationships. It's not usually just one problem. So tell me about what you see the full spectrum for women and men who come through your program.
Yeah, so for the men, a lot of times, we do see situations where we have men come into the program who have just been, really beaten down by life in general. We see them come into the program. They've been in terrible circumstances, from prisons to jails, even where maybe they did do the wrong thing and they got sentenced and they should have. But a lot of times we get them from those environments to help kind of bridge the gap between them getting out of there and going into reintegrating back into society. And so sometimes we see just, a lot of times you get a student that hasn't dealt with a lot of the deep rooted issues in their life from abuse when they were younger, from fathers or mothers who have had addiction themselves, or maybe it's sometimes we deal with people who have been sexually abused, people who have gone through a lot of terrible things. When it comes to the men, a lot of times people just didn't have parents, didn't have family. They come from homeless situations where they haven't really had the opportunity to be loved on, poured into. Another thing we deal with is mental health challenges, from people who have struggled with suicide to schizophrenia and other really challenging mental health things that are going on. And so we get them into the program, and our mission and our goal is to help them find the solution for those types of issues that they're facing and going through. Now, the women, theirs is a little different. They come from a lot of abuse. We help women that have been in domestic violence situations. We have some women that come into the program that have been trafficked, trafficked when they were younger, and it turned into a lifestyle, that they never really wanted to choose. But you could imagine there's just some really terrible things. They have some mental health challenges as well. So we deal with a lot of those. When you really, this is why the time is so important, like you said. When you really start to unfold the layers of a person, you can see what all has contributed to some of their choices and decisions. And that's where you really get to see God work. You really get to see someone be changed when you can speak into something that they've really never shared with anyone and build trust with them? It can really help change the course of their life.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that have really been coming to the forefront in family law, it's, generational trauma. The trauma of, the parent went through something, then that kind of affected the parenting child relationship. Now the child suffers from some, illness, addiction, whatever you want to label it, due to the initial trauma, and how hard it is to really break the chain of the trauma, so that you're not only really, Chris, I mean, if you probably have thought about this already, you're not really just treating an individual, you're treating generations to come if your work is successful. So that's a big thing I think that people sometimes don't think about. As Americans, we're kind of real self-reliant and it's your personal choices, but there is a lot of now new science out there that really talks about generational trauma and how that affects your ability to parent, affects how future generations parent, how they're able to bond, their decision making processes. And it's actually a lot of studies now show it's actually goes all the way down to physiological symptoms, and how the brain actually wires up is changed by the trauma. So, Chris, I think that's a great point. And again, it goes to show just how truly important your work is, not just for today, but for tomorrow too. And it's really touching. And anybody out there, I think, who's listening to this can really see the true value in what it is you're doing. Walk us through like recovery and the rehabilitation process that you guys offer. If a woman walks through or a man walks through your doors today, what does the journey really look like from intake to graduation?
Okay, wonderful. So, say they make a phone call. The first thing we want to do is just deposit hope into the situation and say, "Hey, listen, your life's not over. You can turn this around." And with the help of a group of people, we believe obviously with the help of God, with just committing yourself to get help and recover, we can do this. We can make this happen, and we have plenty of stories that are evidence of that. And so we just try to deposit hope into them from the minute they call, and then hopefully through that conversation and through some other conversations, we can bring them into the program. Day one, they're immediately met with love, with value, with care. Hey, we understand the world can sometimes be a rough place, but while you're here, we're gonna show you love and support. And sometimes that's not gonna always be the easiest things to hear, or that there's multiple facets to that, but we hope that you really know that you're cared for and valued. And so they take them through the intake process, which is paperwork and signing stuff, and then they go into what we call orientation. And orientation is an intensive time where we get to pour into their life, we get to explain the program, walk them through the different things that we do every day. It's a 21-day period where they really get to hear testimonies, talk to team members, meet everybody, set some goals, because a lot of times when someone is in this, they haven't set goals in a long time. So to say, hey, what's a goal for you for the first week, 2 weeks, 6 months? What's that look like? They meet their mentor, their mentor or counselor, where they are able, that's who they connect with while they're in the program. That really speaks into their life, helps walk them through the challenges that they're going to face. So they do all that in the orientation phase of the program. We celebrate that too. So 7 days we have a celebration, 14 days we have a celebration, 21 days we have a celebration, because that's a big deal. But after they get settled, they go into the first phase of our program. And there they do, basic courses. We call them GSNLs, and they go over attitudes, anger, obedience to God, love and accepting myself, all kinds of different curriculum that helps steer them into the right direction. They're meeting with their mentor weekly. They're reconnecting with family sometimes in those first phase of the program. They're participating in some work therapy where they're going to we have thrift stores, we have a lawn crew, we have public awareness events, we do kitchen wood shop, we have a wood making shop, so we try to get them doing something with their hands to help them feel productive, and then to teach them, teamwork and stuff. So that's all first phase. And then second phase, they really dig more into the relapse prevention, finances God's way. We do a book at the Men's Center called Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. It's a great book. It really helps men kind of see how they're wired. We do all kinds of things like that in the second phase of the program. The same with the women. They do classes that are geared towards some of the challenges that women may face and go through and navigate through in both phases of the program. And then at their last 90 days, that's where we start working on aftercare. So what's the plan? Where are we going? Where are we heading? We make them do 30, 60, 90, 180, and 1 year goals. And we start setting those for the next year to year and a half. And they start working on those goals. They're setting them for their future. Where am I going to work? What am I going to do? We offer aftercare 2 different levels here at Pensacola. We have reentry, which is where they live with us. They pay rent to be here. They get a job. They have less accountability, just different kinds of accountability. They're allowed to have things that they weren't allowed in the program, and it slowly kind of shifts them back into what it's going to be like once they leave. And then we have internship where they can stay with us and become a Teen Challenge staff member. There's over 200 Teen Challenges in the United States. And so there's always team members needed, and we love that part. And then if they don't choose any of those, then we help them plan on what it looks like going home. And so the aftercare is really intense, and we can get more into that. But that's kind of how the program goes. It's they're learning stuff every day, so it's an awesome experience.
So that's really, the way you focus on the goals and you focus on developing the goals and offer them the support and sounds like, learning, self-reflection. I know that I'm not, in the same circumstances a lot of people through your program, but you got a year or two, I started like just doing a little woodworking, and I'm not very good at it, but I kind of felt it was a way, like doing something with your hands kind of forces you not to be focused so much on your mind. And I found it was a way to kind of like de-stress and focus on what's in front of me as opposed to always worrying about what's coming up next week or next month, because you have to focus really when you're using power tools. You got to focus on what's there right in front of you at the moment. I think that, I could see why that would be very helpful to people who may have anxiety or having trouble focusing or dealing with stress. It's a great outlet, to do that and just work with your hands. And I was, even I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were telling me their therapy is cutting their grass. Even if it's working on the landscaping crew, getting out in the sun, just the lawnmower and and trying to get away from society and everything, and just kind of, gives you an opportunity to reflect. And that's kind of neat how all that can come into play to help somebody, struggling with these, real serious issues. Um, your program's faith-based, which I know is, central to your identity. For listeners who may not be familiar with faith-based recovery, how does that approach differ from traditional rehabilitation, and what outcomes have you seen?
So faith-based, we believe that that is a central part of what we do. I think that when you look at statistics, you can see how that can play a major role in that number being higher. When you look at statistics of faith-based programs versus those who don't have any type of faith involved in what they're doing, there are statistical differences. I believe that, with Christ, we find purpose. And in that purpose, we find long term freedom from a purpose we were never meant for. And I think that's one of the best things that we offer here is a connection with, Jesus. And I believe he helps individuals throughout their entire life sustain freedom. And we believe in the Bible and the Word of God. So I think that with the faith-based piece of programs, there is a little bit more of a purpose that you begin to engage in. Some of the teachings of the Bible are to help others. And we really try to tell our students that, hey, there's a purpose for your life to really pour into other people and to give back. Well, I think that's where living actually begins, is when we finally get to that understanding that life is not just about me, and it's about what I can do to contribute to the world around me. And we believe that the Christ-centered approach really helps us motivate individuals to step into that. Our success rate at Teen Challenge is really high for those who graduate the program, and those who complete the program, from year to year, we're anywhere from 86 to 92%. They're reporting sobriety. After a year to a year and a half of the program, they're reporting to us, "Hey, I haven't touched a drug since." And that's an amazing number when you think about it. And just seeing the nature of addiction and how it works, I think that that's essential for anyone in addiction, whether they choose a faith-based route or not, is they have to find purpose outside of that. And if they find that, I think that that contributes significantly to their success. And so, yeah, that's our model. It's been our model since 1958. When we were established, we believe that faith is absolutely key.
Well, I think you call it purpose. I called it why.
That's right.
You know, if you're going to do great things and you're going to overcome a challenge, you're going to overcome an addiction. The faith component, it seems to me, is you're saying that's their why, and it keeps you going even when the going gets hard or tough because you have that deeper why, that deeper purpose, that deeper drive. And I would imagine too with faith based, if you're going to church or you find a church that you're comfortable with or, a community you're comfortable with, and that usually comes with support. And it's something I've always heard is, you have to surround yourself with the right people and the right support mechanisms, to be successful. Do you think that's the case as well?
Yeah, I think that that is one of the biggest factors to whether or not someone actually maintains sobriety is that they have a community around them. There's a book out called Addiction and Grace, and it's a really great book, but it talks about how actually the opposite of addiction is community and how community is one of the most important factors. That's something that we deal with in the aftercare too. It's we have to have something solid in place where they have community to love them, care for them, support them, hold them accountable, help them move forward in their life. That's why I think programs like this work is because they're surrounded by people with the same vision of trying to better themselves and become all they can be. And I think that's important. There's quotes out there, you will become who you're around, whatever it may be, and that's essential.
Tell my kids that all the time. Who your friends are, who you surround yourself with, it rubs off on you. It just, it's how human nature is. You can come to that level, or, sometimes people go to the lowest common denominator, and you got to kind of surround yourself with people who share your values or share your purpose, or, or fighting maybe the same challenges you're fighting, to keep you strong and to keep you focused and keep you on point. I had someone recently tell me, I think this was like one of the greatest insights I've ever had. He said, if you have a party or a get together or whatever the case, corporate meeting, what have you, he said, you don't really create a structure. You just kind of let people go where they want to go within the group. He said, watch. He said, your overachievers will bundle up, and they'll be together in one side of the room. Your people who are into this will be in another side of the room. Like he said, it'll naturally sort itself out if you don't provide the structure and just watch. And you'll be able to tell a lot about who shares the same mindset. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And a couple of times I've been in circumstances where I've seen that, and I'm like, man, that guy is a genius because it really does almost every time kind of work itself out that way. So sometimes, you got to know who you're around, or in the alternative, make it a purpose to surround yourself with the people who are going to, be successful or going to take you to the next level of your success, and fulfill your purpose. So here's where your work and my work kind of intersect in a way that I think most people don't really fully appreciate. In your experience, working with these women and men, how many of them are also dealing with family law issues, custody battles, divorce proceedings, or involvement with DCF or the dependency system?
Yeah, so a lot come in. The main one we have actually is going to be custody with their children. They've done some things to damage some trust. And so that can lead to obviously, really trying to protect the kids is probably the goal. But, over time, as they build that trust back, our hope is that they can be reunited as parents with their children and prove themselves and be there for their kids and if they find true freedom, they're able to be there for them the rest of their life. And that's our hope, is that they really find that and are able to do that. So yeah, we certainly have a lot of that. We have people going through divorces while they're here. Obviously, damage has been done through the addiction. Anything you can think of, it's there. Sometimes we're able to help them kind of get restored. I seen that on one of your podcasts that you all kind of deal with that too. Like, hey, can this be worked out? So we try that, but if it doesn't, then that's obviously a factor while they're in the program.
I
And
always
then
have felt like, as a divorce lawyer, we're ethically obligated, in my opinion, to ask that question up front. Is there a way to fix this? Is there a way that I can offer you support through the legal system to get this fixed? Maybe it's not quite such a prisoner's dilemma. Maybe we have some kind of an agreement or a plan that we're going to put in place. Even with custody, even when there's maybe they weren't married or maybe there's already a custody order. I've done it, on both sides of the aisle. If I have a person who's struggling with an addiction issue and they're, they realize that everybody realizes it, can we go ahead and take the steps now and maybe come up with a temporary plan until they can prove themselves and get through this and not, maybe turn it from, an adversarial proceeding to something where both parents kind of have a common goal, a common plan that we're going to get mom or dad through this, and it may be a process, and it may not be immediately going all the way back to where you were at, but to safeguard the child and to safeguard the parent-child relationship. I mean, our work is inundated with cases that substance abuse has come into play, and it touches almost every facet of it. And lots of times, one of the things that really strike me about your program is I've seen numerous people who need help and they don't have a way to get the help because their insurance doesn't cover it, or they don't have insurance, or they don't have a means to even do it, even though they need to do it. They know they need to do it and they want to do it for their kids. And then, when I came across you, that was one of the things that I thought was really, neat and revolutionary, that you try to keep it affordable and their scholarship options. And that's why we were, very happy to sponsor your 5K last year and be involved with that, because that's a big hole in the community. And, I will tell you now, court systems, in custody cases, do not play when it comes to substance abuse. We may have a presumption of equal time sharing in Florida, but that presumption will normally be blown out the water by some serious allegations or serious proof of substance abuse. There's no super factors. All factors weigh the same in the custody statute, but that will definitely get the judge's attention if there's a pattern that can be proved of substance abuse that is, going to place the kids in harm or that the kids have been exposed to. But I didn't mean to cut you off. I just, that kind of hit home for me when you said that, to all the family lawyers out there listening, if you're not doing that in your practice, I think that's a big thing. I've seen judges, I have taken clients and under the right circumstances, when they realize they've had an issue, tell them we're going to fall on the sword. We're going to get rehab. We're going to get drug screening. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And by the time we get to court, I actually literally remember one judge telling me, you've already done everything I would ask you to do, and you've been doing it for the last 18 months. And instead of really, I mean, it wasn't as great as not having the issues, but it was nowhere near as bad as we had thought in the beginning, because the judge, really liked it. And the judge, from the judge's perspective, all day, I'm telling you, you have to go to rehab or you have to do this or forcing people to do this. I think it was refreshing for him that the person went ahead and did it, and he felt like, I don't want to discourage the progress they've made. Or in some ways, I felt like he was kind of rooting for the underdog to keep on, with the good work and keep on with their purpose. You know, we try to do that all the time. But go ahead, Chris. I talked too much there, man.
No, it's good. I like that. That's awesome that y'all do that. And with the being able to help people kind of restore things if it's possible, I think that's a great thing to do, and or try to even pre-plan. If there is a battle or something going on, hey, let's just go ahead and get this help now. And then when we start going to these hearings and stuff, they'll see that you're doing this because you want to and you want to change and you want to get better. And I've seen that has, just like you said, has had great success. Because I've been to a couple court cases with people and spoke on their behalf, and seeing that they're putting in the work. No one's perfect in this world, and they're going to make mistakes. And when they try to better themselves, that should be rewarded in a sense, I think. And I know some things, obviously, disqualify you from certain abilities moving forward. But that is a great thing, and I think that um, that's just wonderful. And yeah, about the 5K, it was awesome to have y'all there. I just wanted to say for just a second, it was amazing. I got to speak to the team, tell them about what we do, and we just thank you guys so much for your support. We were able to put a new roof on our women's center from that event and from the support that came from you and others, and that's just awesome. They needed it bad, and it happened. So it's awesome when you make a plan out like that, and then it actually goes through and happens. So thank y'all for that. But yeah, I'd say we deal with a lot of domestic violence, a lot of divorce situations, even some individuals who have some family battles where they've done some illegal things, where they're trying to pay restitution or whatever it may be. We deal with all of it. It's a big thing.
My wife, was at the 5K with us, and you know, when we were leaving, she was, saying that, but touched her, there wasn't a dry in the place. She's like, she said everybody was touched by it. To see how the community came together to do that. You kind of touched on it briefly, but it's another hot topic in society and family law. And so one I wish would go away because I wish it was, annihilated, but it's trafficking. And, what a lot of people don't understand is, I didn't really understand it until about a year or two ago when I spoke to a lawyer that just kind of really deals with those cases, and that, drug addiction is a way to ensnare a person to traffic them or to control them in the trafficking process. If you don't do X, then you won't get your fix. You won't get this drug or alcohol or whatever it is you're needing. And it's a way to manipulate a person. And it's not, honestly, in some circumstances, it's not the person's fault. They've been purposely addicted, or they may have gotten not even knowing what they were given originally, or slipped to them or laced into something that they had to get them addicted so they can be controlled and trafficked. And to be part of something like that, and you know your program trying to free them from the bonds of trafficking and the bonds of addiction. That was something we felt super strong about, and it was just really just a beautiful day, a beautiful event. I thought it might be first a good day out in the sun, meeting people, maybe some good exercise, and by the end of it, I felt like it was really something that, helped me, kind of get grounded again as to what our purpose is here doing family law. And it was really touching. Chris, I'm a lawyer. My wife says I'm overly pragmatic, overly practical. So I got a practical question, just for a moment here, because, as we're going to have attorneys listening, probably, out there who are dealing with cases like this, who are dealing with people maybe who are even in your program already. Court's kind of like documentation. That's the name of the game. Exhibits, proof that you actually did the rehabilitation program, especially, in custody cases. It's good that you told me you did this, but I want some hard proof. I want some testimony. I want some exhibits. And same with dependency, I'm sure, as well. What kind of documentation or evidence can your program provide? And, what role do you guys play in that? I mean, do you ever, obviously, you graduate, there's probably a certificate. Are you ever called upon to testify and vouch that, hey, this person's been here, they've done X, Y, and Z, and explain what the program, put them through?
Yeah, so we do multiple things with that. Obviously, graduation certificate is there. We get a lot of people who actually they're ordered by a judge to come, but not without their willingness to come. Like, hey, you want to get help? I know a place called Teen Challenge. I want you to go here. Are you willing to go there? And if they say yes, then he'll order them there sometimes. So we do get people sometimes that are ordered to the program. We get people who are current cases where it's up in the air until they complete the program. And so with that, provide evidence. We can always write letters. I've written letters to so many different people about their progress, what they did, what they completed while they were here, their character, all those things. We will appear in court. If we have a student who's graduated the program, he's like, they want you to come and speak. I'm always willing to come speak to share with them. If they've completed the program, that's just what we do. So anything we can do to help them move forward. And I'll speak. Mark, our program manager here, will speak. My wife will speak. Our women's program manager will speak. So we're more than happy to do that to help people who have completed. But we can provide letters, any kind of documentation showing their progress. We do that for monthly progress reports for probation officers, all those things. So we're very familiar with the legal system. We work directly with them. It's just kind of what we do.
All right, getting back off of practical and back to heartstrings. Okay, well, Chris, without sharing any names or giving anything up that would be anonymous, just kind of give us an anonymous story of what are one of the most heart touching things you've seen at the program that really just reaffirmed your purpose of being there and the program's existence.
Yeah, so I have a bunch of these. One, I'll do a recent one. We have a lady who came into our women's center. She was trafficked when she was younger, kind of fell into the situation you were speaking about, had a really, really hard time at first. So when you come from an environment like that, you have a very difficult time trusting anyone. And, I always like to say, the message received is equal to the message sent to our team. And I said, she's receiving from us maybe that we can't be trusted just because of her past. That's what she's looking through that lens. And we've got to help her see through the lens of we can be trusted. And so we work together as a team to send messages to her that say, you can trust us. And over time, she began to open up. And someone who was hardened by the pain of life opened up and she found a relationship with Christ. She actually graduates our program and is doing wonderful. And so that's an example of something that happens here, and it's just a powerful thing. Another one, I have a men's center. I'll do men and a women real quick for you. We have
Okay.
a men's center guy who came into the program, was here for a while, here before for a while, but came back to us, and he spent some time growing, developing, doing wonderful. Walks into a jail that he's been to numerous times, and they don't even recognize him because of the change that they see in him. And he's able to share his testimony to him. And then he was actually able to baptize his own child who got saved while he was in the program. And so just stuff like that you see all the time where people change, and we have graduates who are pastors of churches, who are missionaries, who are businessmen all throughout the community, not just this one, but everywhere, who are great fathers, great wives, great moms, And so just seeing them go from where they were to that there's really not much more rewarding than that.
I think, if we had to sum it up for today, I think you're in the transformation business. I think that's, and that's a big undertaking. Especially dealing with people and like you were talking about trust, when someone's had their entire life, their trust just trampled on and to be suspicious and of everything going on and they've been manipulated and controlled, to rebuild that is, no small undertaking at all. And, you know, my hat goes off to you. So, we've talked about the 5K. I don't know if there's going to be another 5K this year or what your plan is for this year, but tell us about some of the initiatives you got, some of the fundraising you got going on in the community. It takes the whole broader community to support you guys to do great things. So tell us what's in the future, what we can get involved with, how people can help you out, achieve these beautiful transformations.
So, what we have this year, I'll speak on a few. We have three events this year. Our 5Ks on a rotation, so we'll do that in place of our golf tournament next year. But we have a golf tournament April 25th. That's going to help us redo our family life center. That's where we do all of our family days. We do all of our activities, feed people, all those different types of things. So that's a huge building. That's where our golf tournament's going to this year. We also have a Rise and Rebuild event, and that's for that specific building. It's a brunch on March 12th, and that's a great event too. So those are just some of our events. And then our gala is going to be in October. And I just encourage anyone who really wants to see what Teen Challenge is all about. That gala is such a beautiful picture in such a small period of time of what the ministry does and the recovery program does. So those are great events. On the day to day, we have a lawn care business. We have super thrift stores. We have woodworking where we make cutting boards. They're beautiful cutting boards. And so you'll see us in front of stores sometimes selling those things. So you can always support us those ways. But those are things that we do. And then we have a program. It's a student sponsorship program where an individual is allowed to get behind a student. And it's $42 a month. That's the practical side. And you actually get to write them and encourage them on their journey, and they will write you back. And you'll get progress reports on how they're doing. And it's a really a practical way that an individual can invest in supporting their state with us. And like I said, that'll be a scholarship student, someone who has zero support, and you're able to kind of get behind their journey and see the growth in them from where they're at to when they graduate the program. We'll invite you, let you come out and see it and know that you played a role in their journey. So have all those different avenues. We always need funding, of course, but we know that the community helps us so much already, and people like Virga Law help us so much, and we're so appreciative of that. And if y'all ever want to partner with us, I can give you information how. So
We're definitely, there. I will get the team to look into the golf tournament and the gala and the upcoming event so we can continue our support. And I would ask, if you're a business person in the community, another law firm, anybody out there who, sees the true value in this and wants to support something that's good for the community, it's good for people, that really, is instrumental in transforming lives. And so, if, we talked about the golf tournament, we talked about the gala coming up. It's a great part of the community. The team challenge here, is really transforming lives, transforming people, their journey through life, hopefully ending generational trauma. And, it's something that we've always been proud to be a part of. And you have my word that I'll ask the team to get up with you about the golf tournament and the gala and the other events you have coming up so that we can continue to support this. And, I would tell people, $42 a week, is probably, one or two trips to McDonald's these days is probably $42, and you could really make a difference in somebody's life if you're looking at an opportunity to maybe sponsor or do some charitable giving. Chris, if people want to find out more, what's your website? How do they get up with you guys?
So the best way to find out more, you can call us. I'll give you our number, 850-453-4300. And that's a good way to get in touch with us here at the center if you need to talk to someone on the phone. Websites are www.pensacolaMensRehab.com. That's for our men. And the women is www.PensacolaWomen'sRehab.com. You can also Google Teen Challenge Pensacola, and it should pull up our websites on Google. Those are good ways to get in touch with us through the websites. Obviously, we have a email if you ever need anything at info.pensacola@teenchallenge. Any basic questions, anything like that, you can always email us and we'll respond to that email and get back to you as soon as we can. So those are some great ways to get a hold of us. Obviously, you can stop by anytime as well. We have people here to welcome you and answer any questions.
We really do appreciate, you taking the time with us today to explain the wonderful work you're doing. To my audience out there, if you can get involved, please get involved and help Chris, do this and help the Teen Challenge over in Pensacola. It really does make a difference. And we do these podcasts for free. We don't do any advertising on them. It's all for getting good information out into the community. So if you could help us by, liking, sharing, subscribing, doing all those things that you can do on social media and YouTube, I would appreciate it. Because each time you do it, it helps us get the word out to more people and get them the information they truly need. Chris, when we started, I told you time would fly by, and we've, pretty much covered about 45 minutes now. So, Chris, I'm going to sign off, and we will definitely have you back on, and maybe, see where the program's going and talk about some of these events that you got coming up in the year and remind people of how they can get involved.
Thank y'all so much. God
Thank
bless
you,
you.
Chris.